I hosted a Terraria Anarchy server, but PvP is forced to stay on, meaning that as long as you have weapons, you can demolish every player in sight. Will people get greedy and kill everyone, or will players form factions and teams in order to stay alive? Well, let's find out. I started up the server and went to chop down trees for myself because I wanted to make some progress as well. Since I was the god of the server, I let myself get a little head start. Don't tell anyone though. As I started building a house, players almost immediately just started demolishing each other with no hesitation whatsoever. I built myself a tiny little house in order to protect myself from the players joining in, and as more people joined, more deaths started appearing on screen. I made myself another tiny house as my previous one got destroyed and called it Wario's Toilet. People kept on killing me non-stop, and upon time passing, somebody built a massive house in the shape of Squidward's nose, but obviously somebody got very ticked off and blew it up. I went over to the right side of the world and started noticing that people were actually forming little teams in order to progress within the game. As more time passed, the spawn house actually became kind of civilized and it looked pretty nice. Somebody built a massive arena, I'm pretty sure to fight bosses, very close to spawn, and players were surprisingly not absolutely demolishing one another. I'm fairly certain by this point people were not yet in hard mode, as I couldn't notice any hard mode weapons. While traveling to the right side of the world, I had a dance party with Adam Pro Gaming, and as I ventured further to the right, I actually noticed the tiny little tribe from earlier that had just started building a house has actually expanded their base to probably become the most powerful people on the server as of yet. I went down to a cave that I saw on the right side of the house, and I ended up dying. Upon coming back to spawn, I ventured back over to the right, and somebody fed me some ale. These people were trying to get me drunk, so of course I had to join in on the fun, and upon drinking it, I started geeking out. Somebody gave me a demonic mini shark in order to protect myself because I was completely defenseless this entire time, and as more people came upon this house, I had realized that we were building a pretty strong community of players that will go with us to the grave no matter what. Upon more time passing, spawn was absolutely demolished, and the suspicious looking Squidward nose house was no longer there, and people actually formed factions in various different teams. I'm pretty sure the most prevalent one was red versus blue team, and my main idea was to take over red team with the help of a bunch of other players from the blue team. I trapped myself within a cave by accident with no way to kill myself and get out, so I proceeded to build my way out of there, and while trying to kill a filthy member of the red faction, I whipped out my mega shark, started blasting him, only to realize that this Mr. Umbrella Man actually had a fiery greatsword, and I got absolutely wiped off the face of the earth. By this point in time, people were probably preparing to fight the wall of flesh, and with my mini shark, I was frankly underpowered in any team that I decided to join with. Yeah, Boio was the least powerful player on the server. Upon coming back, I actually became a victim of a vicious spawn trap. Somebody had trap spawn in order to decimate any new player that tried to join in the server. We managed to fix it by placing platforms, and I was finally free to roam out of spawn. By this point, I had noticed that people actually killed the wall of flesh and were in hard mode, as there was a hallowed biome while I started traveling over to the right side of the world, and the previous house that the people had built was absolutely nuked. There were aggressors in the servers, there was drama between the factions, and people were being ruthless. There were various teams on the server, and one of the server members actually gave me a full set of titanium armor, a titanium repeater, and demon wings, so I can go and check out the new base they have relocated to. This was the base of a player called Arma and Shaun the Sheep, and they actually started a mini colony that went on to become one of the biggest parts of the server. This, for now, we can call the mini Skylands. I left those players to build their land and came back to the server only to realize that people have already beaten Moonlord and all the progression was done. This is where the storyline starts to get very interesting. So a brand new spawn was built by Big Paul or Ryball within the server, and essentially it was a tiny little sky island for new players embarking on their anarchy journey. This was absolutely beautiful, and everything around me was a masterpiece. There were so many people joined in the blue team, helping to make the server a better place. There were griefers that would sometimes betray the blue faction and destroy things, but these people were always on their guard, and they made sure to protect every monument that they had built. I was super impressed to see this, so I followed Triflum as he showed me around the rest of the creations of the blue team. There were landmines all over the server, so I had to be careful if I didn't want to explode, and the first major area that he had led me to was the massive sky base base that the blue faction had built upon from Arma and Shaun the Sheep in the past. This was a massive collection of sky islands and sky bases by every single player from the blue team. Each person had their own little house. There were countless chests with endgame items, various crafting stations everywhere, and in general this place was absolutely beautiful. Oh boy, if only they had known that this wouldn't last forever. During this time, we summoned in the Squid God and had some fun fighting Moonlord. We defeated it, of course, and then upon venturing to the right side of the world, they showed me around more bases that weren't really as impressive because they were probably griefed, but there were other players and there were other teams that were trying to push for greatness. During this time, we defeated the Destroyer just for fun, and upon coming back to spawn, we went over to the jungle, and blue team actually led me to New Africa. If you don't know the history of this, go watch the other Anarchy server video, cause there is so much lore behind these servers. I was told that this place was destroyed, but they were going to relocate regardless and build another new Africa in a different part of the world and hide it well so the griefers can't get to it. By this point, I am very impressed by what the blue team has done, but their downfall is coming very soon. Quick side note, if you want to host your own Terraria server, I am partnered with Nodecraft, and if you click the first link in the description and use code Boio, you can get a discount on your server purchase. But let's get back to the video. Upon joining back on the server, I had gotten myself a complete story of Dupe Nation and all of its lore, and how people managed to duplicate items in order to make insane progression within the server. They led me over to the ever so promised land of New Africa, and this was probably just as beautiful as the sky base. There were various chests and various houses encased in a massive square of marble, protecting all the citizens inside. It was beautifully decorated, and it had a full set of teleporters so you could teleport between important locations of blue team's base. There was an entire lore built by Triflum for this as well, with exact detail as he asked all the server members to make sure that his credibility was on point. And honestly, Triflum, I can't thank you enough for your work. But one last place that they took me to was the Sky Islands, and I got to witness the destruction of the sky base. This was absolutely horrible, and apparently one of the blue team's members actually betrayed the entire team and blew up their whole base. Most other teams didn't really know what blue team was up to and were unaware of the New Africa being built as well as the Sky Island, so they didn't even know what to grief, meaning that an inside job was the only possibility. Upon joining back on the server, I had witnessed that New Africa was also found by a griefer and absolutely blown to bits. At spawn, the Destroyer was raging through all of the brand new players joining the server, and a pirate invasion was demolishing any person that had no good weapons. With blue team being dismembered, there was practically nobody helping out new players advance, and the server was struck by pure chaos. Once again, upon coming back, I had noticed that a new yellow faction had formed. This was made up of Wario and Eri, and they had built a tiny golem encased base near the edge of the world so they could protect themselves from the griefers. This contained a tiny little house, and at the very top of the house was their most prized weapon, the Star Wrath. I went over to the previous so-called New Africa just to see that it was still destroyed and no progress was made in rebuilding this. Griefers were absolutely brutal with their work, and they would not let any new building slide. I went to go check out spawn, and the only thing that there was 3 chests, a clock, a sign, and an Among Us. Yeah, you guys still think that's funny? Once I relogged to the server one final time, to my surprise, the griefers were essentially bored of playing, and somebody had rebuilt all of spawn and made it extremely nice. The Among Us had more signs to it. The initial spawn was a very nice little pillar, and Triflum had also finished all of the lore, which we could go find in the town. Under spawn was a massive graveyard collection of all the people that had died in the server, and it was kind of brutal to see how many deaths there actually were. Even further over to the left at spawn, there was a nicely built home, and in the sky was a sky island, which had a teleporter, some NPCs, and just a very general nice vibe. That reminded me of the Sky Colony a little bit. Over in the small town that Triflum had mentioned to me were partial destroyed remains of a long lost village. There was the final part of the lore, which explained everything about the small town, and the last remaining unknown bits of the Anarchy server. Above this was a massive sky base, once again very much reminiscent of Arma's and Shaun the Sheep's, but this time it was one massive building with a bunch of branching platforms leading to all of the important areas of the little city. There were many players of the yellow team formed together, guarding this area Terraria against any griefers that would try to explode the land, and after this I went to go explore the remainder of the world. A lot of it was destroyed, and there were many signs all over the globe of this server paying amends to all the people that protected various different bases, and it was so nice to venture around the server and find these little gems, such as this cave that I ventured down into and found this very pleasant looking home. I couldn't tell you who actually built this, but this looked absolutely awesome, and finding these tiny little creations around the server really made my day. Near the ocean at the right side of the world, almost everything had been destroyed, and the griefers made quick work of any homes that were built there. There was more lore of New Africa and the sudden attack, as well as more information about what happened to the sky base, which of course Triflum had written about, and the very final lore of what is now called Skytopia, which was the land built by Arma and Shaun the Sheep, was also finished and placed, cemented as Anarchy server history by Triflum on the land which once stood the sky base. There was a lot of server lore in this video, so if you want to catch up on everything else, I recommend you watch the other Anarchy server videos, and I'll do another one very soon, so don't worry. Everybody will have lots of time to have fun and contribute to Boio server lore, but be sure to check out another video like this on screen. Consider subscribing to the channel if you're new. Drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it. This has been Boio. Peace out.